At the sound of the front door opening, I instinctively hid around the hallway corner. My son-in-law walked in, and next to him was a woman who looked much younger than my daughter, with her arm hooked around his.
"It's even more thrilling coming to your house instead of a hotel,"
the woman said. The moment she kissed my son-in-law on the cheek, the side dish container in my hand began to tremble uncontrollably. The man I trusted like a son. It felt just like that day 30 years ago, when I caught my own husband cheating. My heart shattered all over again. Before I continue, if you're able, please like and subscribe. You'll be the first to hear more touching stories like this. I was frozen in place. I couldn't even breathe until the two of them shut the door and disappeared inside. The container filled with his favorite dishes, braised ribs, pumpkin pancakes my daughter used to sing about, and freshly made ravioli, suddenly felt heavier than ever. It all felt meaningless now, as if it were mocking me. When I came to my senses, my feet were already heading toward the emergency stairwell. I couldn't wait for the elevator. I was afraid someone might see me. My heartbeat echoed loudly as I rushed down from the 12th floor, nearly stumbling the whole way. One of the container lids dropped and hit the stairs with a loud clatter. I was so startled I ran without looking back. Once I left the apartment complex and reached the main road, my mind went blank. I couldn't tell if what I had just seen was real or a nightmare. Even when I got in my car, my hands were shaking, holding the steering wheel. The view outside the window felt distant, like I was watching someone else's life pass by. When I got home and opened the front door, my legs nearly gave out. As I tried to set the side dish container down at the sink, my trembling hands lost their grip. With a loud crash, everything I had lovingly prepared spilled across the floor. The bright spaghetti sauce spread across the white tiles like blood from a torn heart. I sat on the floor in silence for a long time. That night, I remained on the living room sofa like a statue, not even turning on the lights. The TV played noisy laughter, but none of it reached my ears. All I could hear was her voice, and the face of my son-in-law, the man who swore he lived only for my daughter, now overlapped with the face of my husband from 30 years ago. It was a chilly day back then, too, when I saw him laughing with a strange woman in the market alley. I turned away that day, pretending I had seen nothing. My mother-in-law always said, "A woman must endure and wait." That's the key to family peace. I believed those words like gospel and lived my whole life by them. I thought my silence was protecting my family, but the cost of that silence was brutal. I lost my smile, shut my heart, and became a stranger, living under the same roof as my husband. Still, I thought it was worth it. If sacrificing myself meant my daughter would grow up in a stable home, then that was enough. But what did I just witness today? In my daughter's home with her husband, was she now experiencing the same betrayal I once did? What if my daughter, like me, is enduring it in silence? What if she believes, because I did, that this is just a woman's fate? Or worse, what if she knows nothing? Should I tell her the truth? Should I be the one to drive a nail into her heart? I picked up my phone and put it down dozens of times, typed in her name, erased it, typed again. I had no idea what to say, or how I could even face her. Then suddenly, in the stillness of dawn, my phone rang loudly. It was my daughter, Leslie. My heart dropped. I pressed the answer button with shaking hands.
"Mom? What are you doing up at this hour? Did you come by to our place yesterday? I found a container lid outside the door."
Her cheerful voice echoed through the receiver. I couldn't say a word. She had found the trace of the wound I had left behind. "Oh, I must have dropped it while distracted," I mumbled.
Are you okay, Mom? You don't sound well.
"No, I'm fine. Just tired, I guess." Then she added casually,
Simon's been out late with work dinners a lot lately. He said he feels bad for not calling you more.
"Work dinner? Is that what they're calling it now? The truth. The kind I wish I never knew. Stabbed into me like a knife. Will I remain silent again, just like I did 30 years ago? Or will I make a different choice this time? Even after hanging up, her words haunted me. Simon's been out for work dinners. While he was with that woman, such familiar lies. The same excuses my husband used to feed me decades ago. My head throbbed, but I couldn't rest. I spent the entire night scrubbing the kitchen floor, trying to wipe away the spaghetti sauce. No matter how hard I scrubbed, the faint red mark wouldn't disappear. Just like the scar on my heart. Just like the sorrow that may soon spread into my daughter's life. Leslie said she'd visit that evening. What face should I show her? Pretend I know nothing? Smile innocently? Or meet her with a sorrowful gaze that says I know everything? I stood in front of my closet, unsure of what to wear, as if clothing could hide my fear and anxiety. In the end, I chose my plainest, dullest gray cardigan, the one that made me fade into the background. In the mirror stood a worn old woman, a woman who had taken the full brunt of time. I asked my reflection, "What will you say to your daughter today? Will you stay silent again and pat her back like everything will be fine?" The woman in the mirror said nothing. She only faintly resembled my younger self, who gave up on everything decades ago. As the meeting time approached, my heart pounded wildly. I couldn't face Leslie in that stained kitchen, so I headed to a cafe near her office instead. I sat by the window and ordered a hot coffee, but my hands trembled too much to lift the cup. Soon, Leslie walked in. She waved with a bright smile, but to me, she looked more fragile than ever.
Mom, you're early. Have you been waiting long?
"No, I just got here. How is work?"
Work's the same. Always busy. But are you sure you're okay? You sounded off yesterday.
I forced a smile and brushed it off as lack of sleep. We chatted about meaningless things, work colleagues, dramas, a new bakery in town, but the words floated above the surface like oil on water. Her laughter was hollow and my responses were lifeless. Eventually, I broke the silence. I couldn't continue this performance any longer. I gently reached for her hand. It was colder and shakier than I expected. "Leslie, you look so tired. Are you really okay? Is something going on between you and Simon?" Her smile vanished. And in its place, I saw a sorrow I had spent my whole life trying to ignore. Her eyes welled up.
Mom, how did you know?
My heart sank. I couldn't speak. I just looked at her. She lowered her head, fidgeting with her cup.
I know everything, Mom.
What do you mean you know?" I asked.
I've known for a while that he has someone else.
She knew. My daughter had known all along. Then last night, the work dinner lie, you knew that too, and you said nothing? Why didn't you tell me? I raised my voice without realizing. But she didn't look angry. Instead, she looked at me with understanding. With sympathy. And then she said the one thing that shattered my entire world.
It's okay. Mom, I'm just going to endure it, like you did.
Suddenly, the world went silent. I couldn't hear the cafe noise, the music, not even my heartbeat. Only her voice echoed in my head. "When it happened with Dad, you endured it. You always said that if a woman just waits, the man will come back. That enduring is how you protect the family. That's what I learned from you, Mom, so I'll do the same. I can't raise our son without a father. I'll protect my child, just like you did. What have I done? I didn't protect my family. I passed on the curse of silence. The patience I believed to be a virtue was a textbook of inherited pain for my daughter. My vision darkened. Everything I had suppressed for 30 years exploded inside me. I couldn't take it anymore. My trembling hands dropped the coffee cup. With a loud crash, the hot coffee spilled all over the table. But I couldn't feel anything, because something even hotter, tears, were already streaming down my face. No, Leslie. What escaped my lips wasn't speech, but more like a cry. For the first time in 30 years, I sobbed aloud. Even when faced with my husband's betrayal, even under my mother-in-law's scorn, I had never shed a tear. These weren't tears of pity for myself. They were tears of overwhelming guilt for ruining my daughter's life with my foolishness, and tears of bitter regret for failing to protect her. What I had spent my entire life trying to protect wasn't the family, it was my cowardly silence. Only now did I realize this. I couldn't even think to wipe away the tears. Like someone completely emptied out, I just stared at my daughter's face. And I made a decision. I will not let my daughter inherit this hell. No, Leslie, that's not right. I won't let you live like that. Everyone in the cafe turned to look at us, startled by my outburst, but I couldn't see anything. In my world, there was only me and my daughter, her shoulders trembling, head bowed. I had believed I'd protected her all my life, but in truth, I had built a massive prison around her, and in that prison, she had been slowly wasting away. Mom, stop. People are staring. Leslie tugged at my arm in panic. At that moment, I shook off her hand and stood up. Let's go. This isn't a place for this conversation. I grabbed her wrist and walked out of the cafe. She followed me without saying a word. I had never been this forceful with my daughter in my entire life. She seemed afraid of this sudden change in the mother who had always been patient, forgiving, and quiet. Even after getting into the car, we sat in silence. I couldn't bring myself to go home, so I just drove aimlessly along the riverside. The calm water outside the window was a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. Leslie's words kept stabbing me like knives. I'll just live like you, Mom. How long did I drive? Eventually, I parked in a quiet lot and rested my head against the steering wheel. And then I pulled out the memory I had buried in the deepest part of my heart for 30 years. I was 32 back then, as young as my daughter is now. That day, I went to the market early in the morning to buy ingredients for my husband's favorite braised fish. As I picked out fresh fish and crisp vegetables, I was so excited thinking about the meal I would serve that evening to my husband and our baby girl. The heaviness of the shopping bag didn't bother me at all. But near the fruit stall at the market, I saw him, my husband, with a woman I didn't know. She kept laughing and playfully tapping his arm, and he looked at her with eyes so tender, eyes I had never seen before. I froze. My shopping bag fell from my hands. Even as the contents rolled across the ground, I couldn't move. I just stood there, watching their backs fade into the distance. Even after I got home, I felt like a ghost. I couldn't put strength into my hands to cook. I couldn't season the soup right. That night, he came home later than usual. He told me he had urgent work at the office. The sweet expression I had seen earlier was gone. Only a cold, tired face remained. I was sick for days. I couldn't eat or sleep. I didn't know what to do. Confront him? Pretend nothing happened? After days of torment, I went to see my mother-in-law, thinking she would know what to do. I told her everything, my voice trembling. When I finished, she looked me up and down with a pitiful gaze and said coldly,
"So what do you want me to do?"
I was speechless. She continued,
"Do you really think a man can live his whole life with only one woman in his heart? He works hard outside. It happens. If you make a fuss about this, you'll be the one shaming the family. Maybe he strayed because you couldn't keep his heart warm at night. It's your fault. You weren't enough."
Those words pierced my heart like knives. She drove the final nail in.
"If this leaks out, I'll throw you out myself. Do you want your daughter to growing up without a father? If you're so unhappy, pack your things and leave."
I crumbled on the spot. I begged for forgiveness, said everything was my fault. From that day on, I sealed my lips. I buried my emotions. I ignored my pain. I believed silence was the duty of a wife, the sacrifice of a mother. That's how I lived for 30 years. I wiped away my tears and looked my daughter in the eye. But Leslie, Mom was wrong. That wasn't sacrifice. That was cowardice and selfishness. I didn't protect our family. I poisoned your life with the lie that enduring was noble. I ruined your life. As I spoke, Leslie said nothing. Just let her tears fall. But this time they weren't tears of resignation. They were tears of deep sorrow for the pain her mother had endured, and the realization that they had both lived in the same cycle. She reached out with trembling hands and grasped mine tightly. "Mom, why did you only tell me now? I thought I was the only one hurting." We sat there, holding hands, crying for a long time. The tragedies of two women, set apart by 30 years, finally came together. I will no longer hide behind silence, and I will never let my daughter live in this horrible cycle. I gripped her hand tighter. My tears had turned to fury and resolve. When our sobs quieted, I gently squared her shoulders and looked her in the eye. Her eyes still held despair and the fear of not knowing what to do next. I cupped her face and said, in the firmest, clearest voice I had ever used, "Leslie, listen carefully. You must never live like I did." Her eyes shook. Enduring isn't a virtue anymore. Maybe it never was. Maybe it was just foolish women like me who thought it was our destiny and forced ourselves to live that way. And look what came of it. My life was reduced to ash, and now the sparks are landing on you. This curse must end with me. I was denying everything I had believed my whole life, breaking down everything I thought was right, but I didn't regret it, not even a little. You can't build a house on a rotten pillar. It must all come down and be rebuilt from the ground up. But Mom, what about Henry? I can't take his father away from him. And what will people say? They'll blame me, say I couldn't keep my husband. She was still scared, and I understood her, because I had once stood in front of my mother-in-law's scorn and broken apart, just like that. But I wasn't the same woman anymore. Those people, do they live your life for you? Were they there wiping your tears at night when your heart was breaking? And Henry, is that the kind of father you want him to look up to? A man who lies to his wife and sneaks around? That's not a father. That's just a stranger who lives in the same house and deceives both of you. Protecting that kind of home means nothing. What matters is protecting your soul and your son's. I wanted her to see reality. No more false hopes, no more fear. Let's end it with him today. How? Let's go home, to where it all began. That's where we'll end it. We drove back to the house, but everything felt different. We didn't run away anymore. We were headed to fight. After parking in the apartment lot, we rode the elevator up. Those brief moments felt endless. Leslie bit her nails in fear, and I squeezed her hand tightly. Don't worry, Mom's right here. You won't suffer alone anymore. We stood in front of the front door. This was the very spot I'd fled in shock and terror just 2 days ago. Leslie, her fingers trembling, entered the PIN code and opened the door. The house was eerily quiet, as if no one was home. But through my eyes, everything looked different. The entryway floor, the living room couch, even the floating dust particles, seemed stained with the filth of that day's memories. We sat side by side on the sofa, waiting for our son-in-law. Every tick of the clock sounded unbearably loud, like someone calling out how little time we had left, like the countdown to an impending explosion. After what felt like an eternity, we heard the keypad beep and the door swing open. It was him, humming a carefree tune, casually stepping inside. "Oh, Mom, you're here. Leslie, you're home early." He smiled, stepping toward us. But when I saw that hypocritical face, a burning anger surged inside me. "Come sit down, Simon," I said, voice cold as ice. His smile faded. He loosened his tie awkwardly and sat across from us. "Mother, is there something you wanted to say?" he said. "Do you remember what you were doing here Thursday?" I began without delay, no time or reason for sugarcoating. I noticed a flicker of unease in his eyes, but he quickly composed himself. "Thursday?" he repeated. "We had a crucial company dinner that night. It went late. I even told Leslie about it," he said, shamelessly glancing at our daughter. Leslie only bit her lip, unable to respond. "A company dinner," I echoed. "A very hot company dinner?" I watched his expression harden. "Mother, what are you saying? What did I do?" he shot back. "What did you do, indeed?" I raised my voice. "In this sacred home, where our daughter cooks, sleeps, and raises her child, what were you doing?" He sprang up. "Mother, why are you yelling at me like this? I treated you like my own mother. How dare you suspect me?" Yes, that was the reaction I'd expected, the same one I'd seen from my husband 30 years ago. "Thinking of me as a son, huh? Causing my daughter to cry tears of blood?" I snapped. "Hear me well, I was right here. I saw you stride in with a young woman wrapped around your arm." His face turned ashen, but he still fought back. "Must be a misunderstanding, Mother. You must have seen wrong. That couldn't have happened." He then turned to Leslie. "Honey, Mom's mistaken." Leslie looked at me, shaky-eyed. I shook my head and reached for my final card. Maybe I'm old and saw illusions, but what if this was also an illusion? I stood and walked to the entryway. I pointed to a barely noticeable spot near the shoe rack where something lay. "It fell when that woman kissed you on the cheek. I picked it up after talking to Leslie last night." I held up one small sparkling earring, engraved with a luxury brand logo, unmistakable. Seeing that earring, the color drained from his face. His pupils shook as if struck. No more excuses would hold. With a thud, he dropped to his knees. "Mother, I've committed an unforgivable sin. I'm sorry. Please forgive me," he pleaded, bowing his head to the floor. But even his tears didn't move me. Keeping my gaze icy and detached, I declared, "I don't believe your tears. You must beg for forgiveness from her, not me, and she will not forgive you. This is just the beginning." At my cold verdict, his shoulders shook, and he looked up at me through puffy, tear-streaked eyes. Eyes filled not with remorse, but desperate scheming, trying to wriggle out of the situation. He was no different from the man I watched cheat on me 30 years ago. "Mother, please, I was so wrong. Leslie, please forgive me. I promise it won't happen again. I'll fix everything." He clung to Leslie, begging. Still in shock, Leslie simply stared down at him. He interpreted her silence as agreement and crawled to her. holding her pants leg in a pathetic, clingy display that made my skin crawl. When he didn't let go, I spoke sharply. You still don't get it, do you? Do you think kneeling and shedding a few tears changes anything? You've tarnished her trust and our home. He stuttered, I'm sorry, Mother. Maybe I was drunk. It was a mistake. Mistake? I spat. You actually said enjoying it at home was more thrilling than a hotel. He froze, unable to speak. Do you expect me to believe that intoxicating perfume was just drunken breath? You've mocked me and my daughter enough. Crushed by my resolve, he fell silent. But then he frantically pulled out his phone and dialed someone.
Mom, it's Simon. Please come home fast, save me.
As always, he fled behind his mother when trouble hit. A cowardly, typical adult move. His call ended, and the living room sank back into heavy silence. He believed salvation would come. Leslie feared another storm. And I braced for the monumental confrontation lying ahead, one that would echo the one that nearly broke me 30 years ago. Suddenly, the keypad beeped loudly as someone else entered. The door swung open. It was his mother. She burst in, frozen at the sight before her. Her kneeling son, his pale wife, and me, standing like ice in front of them. Her eyes sought her precious son. Oh, my son, what have they done to you? She rushed in, scooping him up and glaring fiercely at Leslie. Did you do this? Did you make my son kneel? Leslie couldn't speak, only pale lips trembling. In that instant, I was struck by flashbacks of myself, 30 years ago, before my own mother-in-law. Turning to me, his mother demanded, Madam, what on earth is happening? Aren't you supposed to intervene, not produce this scene? I looked at her coolly, saying nothing. Her expression hardened as she rallied. I raised Simon carefully. How dare you do this to him? In the same breath you're calling me out. That sentiment sent my calm patience shattering. The shackles of 30 years of silence broke in an instant. I stepped forward, fury simmering. Madam, you're mistaken. She, my daughter, did nothing wrong. The one who betrayed and deceived is your son, who brought another woman into our home, my daughter's home. Her face flickered between shock and defiance, but before she could respond, I pressed on. You might think infidelity is normal when men are lonely and tired. That's exactly what mother-in-law told me 30 years ago. She recoiled, and I drew even closer. But today I understand this. It's not women who are weak. It's men like your son who are cowardly and corrupt, and mothers who excuse them that are to blame. The room fell deadly silent. He, kneeling and weeping, looked up. She, his mother, was shaken by my words. Then she let slip. I was trying to sort it out quietly. Why did it all blow up so badly? That confession chilled me to the bone. I eyed her coldly. You said you were sorting it out, so you knew about her, and remained silent? She froze, speechless. Do you know the woman? At my cold question, the air in the living room froze. The face of my in-law, who had been shouting so fiercely just a moment ago, turned deathly pale. Her eyes shook with anxiety, and she desperately tried to salvage the situation. What are you talking about? How would I know that woman? She waved her hands in denial, frantically trying to explain. But it was already too late. She had fallen into the trap she had dug herself with her own tongue. I took a step closer, blocking every possible escape route she had. You said you were going to take care of it quietly, didn't you? That doesn't make sense, does it? How could you take care of someone you don't even know? I repeated her own words back to her, not missing a single syllable. Her face was now filled with confusion. At that moment, my son-in-law suddenly jumped in, desperate. "Mom, please stop. Stay out of this." At my shout, he flinched and fell silent. I no longer saw any value in speaking to him. My eyes were fixed only on my in-law, on the woman who might very well be the other axis of this entire tragedy. It was then that my daughter Leslie, who had been in shock and silent until now, spoke up in a trembling voice. "You knew too, didn't you? You knew that Simon had another woman. Even you, Mother. You knew." Her voice was pure despair. As much as her husband's betrayal hurt her, perhaps even more so, the betrayal by another mother she had trusted shattered her completely. Realizing she could no longer escape, my in-law suddenly changed her attitude. She let out a deep sigh, then looked at us with a resigned expression, as if she had decided to justify everything. "Yes, fine, I knew. He's my son. Am I not allowed to know?" At those words, my daughter and I froze. Yes, from the beginning, from the very start, I knew Simon was seeing her. She now shouted as if she had given everything up. There wasn't the slightest trace of guilt or remorse on her face. Instead, her tone was filled with shamelessness, as if everything had been inevitable. "Then who is she? The woman who ruined my daughter's marriage and broke her heart. Who is she?" At my desperate question, she made a face like I was being ridiculous. "Oh, for heaven's sake, you know her too, don't you? President Klein, the biggest business partner at Simon's company. His only daughter. She got divorced not long ago. Poor thing." President Klein. My mind went blank. A vague face surfaced in my memory, one I had seen a few times at family events, always sitting in the corner, always with a shadow over her face. That woman and my son-in-law. I could barely stay upright. This wasn't just an affair. This was a disgusting entanglement of business interests and personal desires, a massive deception. How could you? You closed your eyes and let my daughter's family be destroyed just to help your son's business.
I didn't turn a blind eye. I mediated. Our Simon was struggling because of work. President Klein's daughter comforted him and gave him strength. How could I stop that? She was divorced too. She had nowhere to go, poor thing. So what if they leaned on each other a bit? It was just a passing emotion. It would have ended soon. I was going to handle it all, make sure Simon returned to where he belonged.
She continued.
I wasn't being petty like your daughter. I was looking at the big picture.
Big picture. She dressed up her ugly complicity and deception as a big picture. I didn't even feel anger anymore, just deep disgust and loathing. For what people are capable of. These people were not family. They were parasites, exploiting each other for gain, trampling on the pain of others like it meant nothing. I looked at my daughter Leslie. She wasn't crying. She was just staring blankly at a single point in space. The face of someone whose world had collapsed. The expression of someone who had lost even the last ounce of hope. I walked slowly toward my daughter and tightly held her cold hand. I wanted to pass on my warmth, my resolve, my everything. Leslie, at my call, her empty eyes slowly turned toward me. "Pack your things." At those firm words, the in-law and son-in-law's faces turned pale with shock. What did you say? Are you in your right mind? Honey, are you really going to just listen to your mother and leave me? No, absolutely not. Ignoring their protests, I looked only at my daughter and said, I can't stay another day in this filthy house. I won't let my life be trampled like this anymore. Let's go. And so I took my daughter's hand, walked past the two who were now shouting at us in desperation, and looked down at them coldly, like insects. This is no longer a marital dispute. This is fraud. You've conspired to deceive and ruin my daughter's life. From today, she's leaving this house and will never have anything to do with people like you again. From now on, talk to us through a lawyer." I led my daughter toward her bedroom. Behind us, the in-laws' shrill screams rang out. "This is all your fault. You're ruining my son's family." And I thought, family? You're no family. You're parasites, feeding off my daughter's life. I'll tear every one of you off her, one by one. We entered Leslie's room and began packing in silence. A few clothes, her child's photo albums, some small things she had treasured over the years. Most of the house felt tainted, polluted by dirty secrets. We couldn't take much. Leslie said nothing. She just moved like a machine, following my lead. It pained me to see her hollow gaze, but I couldn't stop. I knew if I crumbled now, I'd never rise again. One suitcase and a small box. That was all Leslie took, from the house she'd lived in for over 10 years. As we crossed the living room to leave, her husband stood in our path one last time. "Honey, please. Think of Henry. Please don't do this. I'm sorry. I'll end it with that woman. I'll cut off ties with my mother too. Please." I blocked his path and said coldly, "Now, what's the point? What you need to fix isn't that woman, it's yourself. Step aside." Intimidated, he stepped back. And we left. As we rode the elevator down, Leslie looked back through the closing doors at the front door of the house she had lived in. I couldn't begin to fathom the complex emotions in her eyes. That first night back at my house, we said nothing. I prepared a warm bed for Leslie and quietly left the room. From the living room sofa, I watched her bedroom door the entire night. The faint sound of her crying behind the door stabbed at my chest like a knife. But I didn't go in. I knew what she needed wasn't comfort, but time to face her pain and let it flow. The next morning, Leslie came out with swollen eyes. I said nothing and set the table. She couldn't eat, but she tried to force a few bites down. It broke my heart so much I had to look away. That was the beginning of a new battle against society's prejudice. Rumors spread faster than the wind. Neighbors whispered behind my back. Even lifelong friends confused and hurt me. "Sonny, are you really going to let Leslie get divorced? She has a kid. Isn't it too much to throw everything away just because her husband cheated once? Shouldn't you help mediate instead of pushing her to leave? He apologized, didn't he? Isn't one mistake forgivable? Don't you know how hard life is for a divorced woman?" I no longer answered. I just hung up. They didn't understand. This wasn't just about an affair. This was about one family trampling and deceiving a person's entire life for their own gain. I had no strength or reason to explain to them. What mattered wasn't the world's judgment, but my daughter's life. Leslie, too, was suffering. At work, her colleagues' pity and baseless gossip hurt her. At her son's kindergarten, other moms labeled their home as problematic. One day, Henry came home and asked me teary-eyed, "Grandma, my friends asked if my daddy's gone now. Can't I see him anymore?" I held my innocent grandson and cried with him. It tore me apart, knowing this was all because of the greed and filth of adults. That night, Leslie came into my room. She looked more exhausted and defeated than ever. "Mom, am I doing the right thing? If I had just endured it, no one would have gotten hurt. Now I've made you suffer, even Henry." I took her hand and sat her next to me. "Leslie, there's no such thing as a painless goodbye. But if you leave a rotting wound alone, your whole body decays. It hurts now, like cutting through flesh. But once this pain passes, new skin will grow, stronger, healthier." Looking into her eyes, I said, I lived for a long time with a rotting wound. No one knew how much it hurt. So I know, the pain you feel now, it's nothing compared to the pain you'd feel if you stayed. Don't waver. This isn't your fault. You're fighting the bravest battle to protect yourself and your child. Strength returned to Leslie's eyes. That day we visited a lawyer and began preparing the documents for the divorce. The legal jargon was complicated, the process cold and overwhelming. But hand in hand, we moved forward, one step at a time. And finally, the day came to submit the documents to the court. As if we had planned it, we both put on the neatest, cleanest clothes we had. The scenery outside the bus window on the way to the courthouse looked peaceful, but my heart had never felt heavier. Leslie, sitting beside me, nervously fidgeted with the envelope of documents resting on her lap. I quietly placed my hand over hers. Leslie? Yes, Mom. Today, I feel like I've truly become your mother. Leslie lifted her head and looked at me. I lived my whole life thinking I was sacrificing everything for you, but now I realize it was all just an excuse for myself. I didn't protect you. All I taught you was how to stay silent, but now walking this path with you, hand in hand, facing the world, this feels like the path of becoming a real mother. I'm sorry, Leslie. I'm so sorry for becoming your true mother too late. Tears streamed from my eyes, but they were no longer tears of regret or self-blame. They were tears of gratitude for finally returning to my place and of overwhelming emotion for starting this new journey with my daughter. Leslie leaned her head quietly on my shoulder. Then she whispered softly, "No, Mom, to me, you've always been the best. And even now, you're the bravest mother in the world." And like that, leaning on one another, we headed toward the place where our new life would begin. The courthouse doors were heavy and cold. The moment we opened them and stepped inside, the memories of the marriage flashed before us like a montage. There must have been happy moments, memories of laughter, but what surfaced now was only betrayal and pain. Mediation day. In a small room in the courthouse, we faced him and his mother one last time. Even to the very end, they blamed us, trying to push all responsibility onto our shoulders. But we were no longer shaken. After mediation ended, as we stepped outside, my son-in-law followed us. In just a few months, he had become thin and haggard. "Leslie, is this really the end? Henry, will I really never see him again?" Leslie stayed silent for a long time, then turned to face him. Her gaze no longer held anger or resentment, only a sadness so deep it couldn't be measured. "No, you're still Henry's father. That will never change, but you're no longer my husband. This is the end for us." That was the final word. Leslie never looked back again. We stepped out of the courthouse into the sunlight. It felt like we had finally come out of a long, cold, dark tunnel. The wounds still stung and hurt, but at least we were walking toward the light. Since then, several seasons have passed. Leslie found a new job and got a small home where she began a new life with her son, Henry. The wounds of divorce didn't heal easily, but day by day, Leslie grew stronger. She was no longer someone's wife, no longer someone's daughter-in-law. She was learning how to live in the world as Leslie Parks, in her own name. Henry, too, adapted well to his new surroundings. The pure sound of his laughter became the greatest comfort and hope for us both. And change came to me as well. For the first time in 30 years, I began to spend time for myself. Having lived my whole life as someone's wife, someone's mother, I signed up for a painting class at the local cultural center. The first time I picked up a brush, my hands trembled. Standing before the blank canvas, I had no idea what to draw. Then one day, I began painting a small wildflower outside the window. A tiny living thing that bloomed strong and unbroken, even through wind and rain, in barren soil. It reminded me of my daughter Leslie, and perhaps it reminded me of myself, how I had endured all those years. So I kept painting it over and over again. While painting, I finally came face to face with myself. I realized that even within me, there were colors. There were stories I had long wanted to express. It took a very long time to realize that. One weekend, Leslie came to visit me. Smiling brightly, she placed a small envelope in my hand. "Mom, let's go on a trip." Inside were 2 plane tickets. The destination, Tampa, Florida, the place young people go to watch the sunrise. A place I had never seen in my life. "What's this all of a sudden?" "I just wanted to see the ocean with you. Let's go to the East Sea. Let's leave behind all the pain of the past." And so, for the first time ever, just the 2 of us set off on a trip. We boarded a dawn train, racing through the darkness toward the sea. Watching the scenery pass outside the window, we talked about so many things. Painful memories, hard times, and how we would live from now on. When we arrived at Tampa, the ocean was still shrouded in darkness. Standing in the cold sea breeze, we stared quietly beyond the horizon. Then finally, piercing through the pitch-black night, a crimson glow began to rise. Before that majestic sunrise, we couldn't say a word. We just watched, praying silently that all our pain and sorrow would melt away into that red light. As the sun fully rose and the world became bright, Leslie said to me, "Mom, I'm okay now, really." At that moment, I knew my daughter had finally come out of that long, dark tunnel. Thank you, Mom, for holding my hand that day. If it weren't for you, I'd still be crying alone in that darkness. I hugged my daughter in silence. The sound of the waves became our background music. No, Leslie, I should be thanking you. You saved me too. Because of you, I finally found the courage to live my own life. We looked out at the ocean for a long time. On the return train, I stared out the window and thought, I was taught that endurance is a virtue. I believed that sacrifice was love. But now I know, true love isn't about trapping someone in silence. It's about giving them the courage to walk into the storm together. A torn letter cannot be pieced back together. A broken trust never returns to its original form. But that's okay, because we've thrown away that torn letter, and now we'll write our own story on a blank new page. A few days after returning home, a photo arrived on my phone. It was from Leslie. In the picture, my grandson Henry had drawn a picture with his tiny hands. It was a drawing of a smiling grandmother, Mom, and himself. At the bottom, in crooked little handwriting, it said, "The family I love most in the world." I laughed and cried for a long time while looking at that picture. Real family isn't tied by blood or paper. It's those who embrace each other's wounds and fight together for each other's happiness. That's what I finally learned. And you, what would you have done? If the most precious person in your life lost their way and was in pain, what choice would you make? The answer is probably already in your heart. The box called endurance, wrapped in the name of love, can often become the strongest prison we hand to the next generation. But in the deepest darkness, only then do we finally realize true love is not silence, but courage. If you're swallowing your pain alone, telling yourself, "It's okay if I'm the only one who suffers," please remember, sometimes one brave confession from you can be the greatest gift. and the only key that opens a new path for the person you love.